Recording this on a Tuesday. Hope everybody out there is having a great week so far. Just 9 days away from Christmas. It's basically here as we head down the stretch of the NFL season. A huge football weekend, to say the least. Next weekend with the college football playoffs kicking off on the 19th. So there'll be, you will have a boatload of NFL and college football games. But as always, we begin with the league where no contract is guaranteed. This, of course, is episode 1031, Wild Bills, and that's where we begin with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, kind of like a team that has become, to me, even if you're not a Buffalo Bills fan, a must-watch team. This team plays some of the craziest games. They have been a consistently just up and down team. They, to me, had their most impressive win of the season over the New England Patriots, 35-31. Buffalo dominates the second half. At one point, of course, they were down 21-0. This is despite the fact that they gave up well over 240 yards of rushing. Buffalo scored on 5 straight possessions to kind of take control of the game, though the Patriots did have the ball back with a chance to win, but Buffalo's defense was able to hold on. Patriots didn't even cross midfield on that last drive. Listen, when you have the best player in football, you like in today's NFL, especially this year, you are going to have a chance to win. Now, Josh Allen didn't have a spectacular day, but he's still Josh Allen, and he is the best player in football. He will not win MVP this year. That's going to be Stafford. Matthew Stafford is going to win MVP, but he is him. And this is how Buffalo is going to win. If Buffalo wins, it's not going to be because of their defense. They're going to have to win it with their offense. They're going to have to outscore people. Look at some of the scores that they've won by. Look at some of the scores of these Buffalo games this year. If you don't believe me, 41-40, 44-32, 39-34, and now 35-31. Those are the type of games. Those are the type of scores that Buffalo is going to have to win. They're not going to. They're going to be hard pressed to hold anybody under 30 points, especially when we get into the playoffs. Now, maybe, I don't know. Maybe in the playoffs, defense can improve somewhat, and they can start getting some pressure on the quarterback. With Bosa has been very good this year. He's had a nice comeback year, but they can't stop the run. Their lives dependent on it. They just can't. I don't see how all of a sudden you can stop the run all of a sudden when you haven't stopped the run all season long. I don't see how that is something that you can turn on overnight, especially in the playoffs. We've seen it one time. We've seen it once before. You go back to the 2006 the 2006 Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were an awful run defensive team in the regular season. Playoffs, they basically shut everybody down and ended up winning the Super Bowl, and really won the Super Bowl based off their defense. If you go back and look at those scores in the Super Bowl, in that playoff run, their offense did not play particularly well. They ran the ball. Peyton Manning was still at the top of his game, but they won that Super Bowl because of their run defense. They ran the ball, and they finally played a physical brand of football. Buffalo has that guy in Josh Allen, and I have a feeling that I can't see them winning a game where they don't score at least 30 points. Like, they're not winning games 27-20. They're not winning games 24-20, 24-21. That's just not going to happen this year. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. But they are, without question, one of the most entertaining teams in football, if not the most entertaining team in football. They are never out of the game. They have absolutely had their way with their opponents in the second half of these games. Um, in the second half of these games, and that of course was the case against with the New England Patriots. Again, New England's probably going to still win a division. They have a favorable schedule. The Bills still have to play the Eagles. Still have to play the Eagles, but New England, you win this game, the division would have been a wrap, would have been wrapped up. But now, they at least you make New England sweat for an extra week in terms of putting the division away. As far as we're gonna go around the league a bit. Some great games, especially in the 4 o'clock, 4:25 window. We immediately have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, of course, lost to the Chargers 16-13, but that, of course, wasn't even remotely close to being a story. The story of that game is, of course, Patrick Mahomes is out for the rest of the season with an torn ACL and LCL. The Kansas City misses the playoffs for the first time in a decade. So if you're in the AFC, you don't have to deal with Mahomes. No Mahomes, no Andy Reid, no Kansas City mystique. The AFC is wide open. Wide open. If you don't think that makes a big difference, not seeing Kansas City, even let's say Kansas City would have gotten the playoffs at 10-7 or 9-8. No, you just don't. You just want to see that team out of the mix. You just want to see that team out. I don't care how down they were. You don't want any part of that team in the playoffs. No one would. So I'm telling you right now, all these teams that are going to the playoffs or will be in the playoffs are doing cartwheels that the Kansas City Chiefs are not in the playoffs. Trust me. Trust and believe. I guarantee you. So looking at Kansas City, right, at a certain point, and we've been saying this all year long, at a certain point, the run was going to end. The 7 straight conference championships, that will never happen again. I'm telling you right now, it will never happen again. Never. It's too hard. The NFL is it's too much parity in the NFL. It's way too hard to win in the NFL on a consistent basis. The quarterbacking, staying injury free, it's just too hard. It's too difficult. There's no team on the horizon that's ready to fill that void that Kansas City had. That filled Kansas City's void as being the dominant team. There's no team, no franchise out there right now. Kansas City. I think that, yes, this version of their dynasty is over. Are they done for good? No. The quarterback is only 30, 31 years old. He does not, coming back from an ACL, LCL injury is not what it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. Guys come back from ACLs, especially at the quarterback position all the time. It's not, this guy, Patrick Mahomes, is not even a running quarterback. He did a lot of running this year. Kansas City will have to address that with the upgrade in terms of improving their running game. But Patrick Mahomes is one of the best pocket passers of all time. The guy is a savant, genius quarterback. He doesn't need to run to be effective. He will still be able to move effectively. I'm not worried about Patrick Mahomes coming back. Now, Kansas City does have to reset that roster. The roster's gotten a little bit older. They, in certain spots, 2 guys in particular, with Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, a lot of people think Kelce, despite the fact that he's having actually a pretty good year statistically, still not impactful as he once was, and still not a top tight end as he once was, but still serviceable. But a lot of people think he's going to retire after this season, that this will be it for him. Chris Jones has a $44 million salary cap, $44 million tag on his salary next year. Salary will be $44 million against the cap. He will not be on the team next year. He just won't. I think they will trade Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones is still a very good player. He's not the dominant player that he has been. Did not have an All-Pro season and didn't have a bad season, but it's not the player that he once was. Still has picked it up of late. In the last 4 or 5 games, he's been very good. But they will find a way. They will move him, flip him, just like they did Tyreek Hill. We've seen them make these trades. They'll they'll make a move, get some draft picks for him, and be fine from that standpoint. Spagnuolo still runs the defense. Their defense is still a top 10 defense in both points allowed and yards allowed, maybe even top five. So the defense wasn't the problem this year. It wasn't a problem. Mahomes had one of his best statistical years in the last 3 or 4 years, and I think people are looking at what's wrong with Kansas City. It wasn't that Kansas City just fell off the cliff. What happened is everybody else got better. Look at their division. They're going to have two other playoff teams in their division: the Chargers and Denver. Denver could go to the Super Bowl. Look at the coaches: Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton. Sean Payton is already a championship coach. We know Jim Harbaugh is one of the top 6 or 7 coaches in the NFL. And he has the Chargers headed in the direction of being a Super Bowl caliber team. They don't have the horses this year because they're missing both tackles and maybe need another offensive weapon or two. But the Chargers will be a Super Bowl contending team before long. Trust me, Jim Harbaugh is that great of a coach. So the division has gotten better. Like Kansas City, the previous 6 years was like 27-9 in the division. They're 1-3 this year. Chargers and Denver this year are 8-1 in the division. So we look at, again, it's not all about what Kansas City is not. Those other teams have just gotten better. They have. I mean, the other teams have gotten better in that division. When you walked into a season, one of the reasons why Kansas City had so much success, their division, they basically was an automatic. It was almost an automatic 5 or 6 wins in their division alone. They were either going to be 5-1 or 6-0. A bad year for Kansas City in division was 4-2. That was a bad year for them. That's a horrible year for them. But they more times than not were 6-0 or 5-1 in that division. So I'm not going to overreact to Kansas City not making the playoffs this year after 7 straight appearances in the conference championship game. I think that this franchise has proven that they can reinvent themselves. We've seen them reinvent themselves during this particular stretch. They were a high-powered, offensive-dominated football team when they won their first Super Bowl. Their last 2 Super Bowl wins, they were a manage the clock, shut down defensive team that played great situational football. So we've seen them morph over the course of during this tenure during the Mahomes Andy Reid era, and I don't expect that to change moving forward. The biggest question that Kansas City has as a franchise, biggest question that they have is what happens with how long does Andy Reid want to coach? How many more years? Andy Reid's like 67. Did not have his best year this year. Let's be honest about that. He absolutely did not have his best year this year. Still one of the top coaches in the league. I don't think nobody will dispute that. That is the biggest question. And by the way, if Andy Reid does decide to step down at not after this year, after next year, something like that, you still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have the most important, one of the best players at the most important position in all of sports. And we've seen we've seen teams with the right amount of talent be able to win Super Bowls even when they lost a great coach. I mean, we saw that in San Francisco when Bill Walsh walked away early. George Seifert won two more Super Bowls. We saw even Dallas when Jimmy Johnson was fired. They won a Super Bowl with Barry Switzer. Okay, so it's all about having the quarterback. Even more important than the coach, you got to have the quarterback. I mean, Tom Brady won the Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. So it's all about having the right person, the quarterback, and the right personnel around that quarterback. Not to say coaching is not extremely important in the NFL. It is, but just because when Andy Reid does decide to walk away, that will not, to me, will not indicate that Patrick Mahomes is winning Super Bowl. That Patrick Mahomes won't be done winning, going to and winning Super Bowl. So I think But that is the biggest question moving forward. Um, what happens with Andy Reid? One of the other big games in that 4 o'clock window was a great 4 o'clock window. Some excellent games in that late window. Denver and Green Bay. This game was could have been game of the week over Buffalo and New England. Um, Denver able to get by New England. Excuse me. Denver was able to get by Green Bay 34-26. A devastating loss for Green Bay, not just on the field, but in terms of what they sustained two catastrophic injuries, offensively and defensively. Micah, Micah Parsons, who has been one of the more dominant players in the league this year, and certainly outside of Myles Garrett, I think the second best defensive player in the game this year, tears his ACL. Then you have Christian Watson. Christian Watson's out. We don't. Those two guys are out. Green Bay goes from a team that I really, in the middle of this game, I thought to myself, Green Bay I think, is Green Bay a Super Bowl team? I really thought highly of Green Bay Green Bay at one point was in control of this game. Parsons gets hurt. Love throws an interception, and it changes the entire complexion of this game and probably the entire complexion of the Green Bay season. I think Green Bay will still make the playoffs. They're going to be in a dogfight with Chicago in terms of winning that division. But Michael Parsons was playing unbelievable football this year, having to me his best year, by far his best year. I'm not just talking about sacks. I'm just talking about just impacting the overall defense. And after he left, like Denver did whatever they wanted to do offensively. You don't replace that guy. So just a devastating loss in terms of from an injury perspective for the Green Bay Packers. Denver keeps on rolling at the going 11-2. They find a way to win these close games. They are very comfortable in these close games. Bo Nix continues to impress, especially in the fourth quarter, making big plays. Their defense plays great situational football when making key stops. We saw that in the Washington game with the tip pass in the overtime that kept their winning streak alive. That would have been a win for the Commanders. So Denver keeps rolling. Denver's going to win that division. But just a awful Sunday for the Green Bay Packers. I really thought Green Bay had turned the corner offensively, playing excellent defensively, starting to run the ball, get Jacobs going, and the timing. This injury couldn't have come at a worse time for the Packers, and again, outside of Jordan Love, Micah Parsons is the most important Packer for sure, without question. Best of the 21st century, we go to arguably, arguably the greatest rapper of all time. He's top two for sure. He's not below two. He's not one in my book, but definitely in the top two. Jay-Z, we look at The Blueprint, which came out September 11th, 2001. Definitely one of the great hip hop albums in the 21st century. It's been on many people's lists. It's been on a few lists considered the best rap album in the 21st century. You can make a strong case. There are a couple of albums that could be certainly in that conversation, but definitely The Blueprint is right there. So when this came out, of course, again, September 11th, 2001. Anybody of a certain age knows what that day meant to everybody, every American. That day changed the world. I was walking from the record store. I had just bought the album. I was actually walking from the record store when I found out about what transpired in terms of what happened on September 11th. So that I will never ever forget that day. not only for what happened transpired September 11th, but also that's the day that I bought the Jay-Z album, the Blueprint album. This is Jay-Z's best album. And I think that over the years, like people, you can debate, some people like Black Album, will favor Black Album. Black Album is phenomenal. Some people will still say Reasonable Doubt, which is of course his first album, absolutely a classic. Those three are definitely classics for sure. Black Album, Reasonable Doubt, and Blueprint. But to me, start to finish, top to bottom, production, this is his most complete album. You have Kanye West, a young Kanye West, Just Blaze, Timberland were heading to production. I listened to Jay-Z's albums leading up to this album, from Reasonable Doubt up until through the Dynasty album, with the exception of In My Lifetime, which is very underrated. And that was Jay-Z's second album that came out in '97. With the exception of In My Lifetime, even with Reasonable Doubt, if you really really listen to the latter parts of the Jay-Z albums, it's a little, the cupboard was a little bare. The cupboard, I'm telling you right now, the Jay-Z did not, for about a stretch. You go Volume 2, Volume 3, The Dynasty, the ends of those albums did not end well. The latter parts of those albums did not end well. This was not, and again, this was not discussed enough when we talk about Jay-Z's legacy. It's not, because he's accomplished so many other things with the touring, with the Grammys, with the millions of countless albums that he sold. But if you really look at Jay-Z's albums outside the Blueprint and outside of Volume 1, there's a lot left to be desired with the last 2 or 3 tracks on each album. This was not the case in this particular album. And I thought that leading up to this album, for 3 straight albums, Volume 2, Volume 3, and the Dynasty album, I really thought that those albums that Jay-Z's albums were getting progressively worse. I bring this up because in 2001, of course, we had the historic battle, one of the great rap battles, if not the greatest rap battle of all time, with Nas and Jay-Z. Produced two classic albums, 2 of the greatest diss songs of all time, Ether and Takeover. But a lot of people will go, and there are a lot of people out there that will say that Jay-Z's resurrected Nas's career, because leading up to that, Nas was struggling. The compilation album that he had, where he tried to get other people involved, was not very good. Nostradamus, probably his weakest album. Wasn't a horrible album, but probably the weakest Nas album. And again, I won't disagree with that. I won't disagree with that. Stillmatic revitalized Nas, and then Nas has not looked back since, to me. But if you look at what Jay-Z did leading up to the Blueprint, I can make a case that the Blueprint didn't save Jay-Z's career, but the Blueprint kind of you look at what he did before the Blueprint and what he did after the Blueprint. The Blueprint. The Blueprint is way more important of an album than what we give it credit for. It really was. Now, again, Blueprint 2 comes out in '02. That's the ultimate Feast of Famine album. It was not a very good album. It had some great hits on it. It had some trash on it. It was an average album at best. Kingdom Come was just a bad album. The difference is, Black Album, of course, I think is a classic. But leading up to the Blueprint, Jay-Z had released, I can make a case, 3 not mediocre albums, but 3 mid albums at best that just happened to sell a lot of records and just happened to have the right amount of hits so that we wouldn't be having a conversation like this. This was a very important album in Jay Z's career. It was again way more important than what we give it credit for. Um, this album sold 3 million copies. It earned five mics from the source. It again, you get top flight production. I think Kanye produced the most songs Kanye produced the most songs on this album. Um, he showed some vulnerability on this album with the song "Cry." Um, he basically it wasn't a solo album, but coming off the Dynasty album, outside of Eminem, it basically was a solo album. Outside of Eminem, he got a lot of criticism on the Rock album for having with too many features. But he was trying to showcase Bleak and Beanie Siegel and a couple other guys and a couple other and a couple his other people that he worked with. So I thought this album again. I think to me this is clearly the best album that he's made from start to finish. I think it's in conversation with any best hip hop album of the century for sure. One of the best albums of the 2000s for sure. And I don't think I don't believe as good I don't believe that from start. The Black album was very good. I love the Black album, but I don't believe he's come close to album since. Outside of Black Album, I think that you can. I wouldn't even compare the Black Album to the Blueprint. I don't think he's come close since. To me, this was the absolute peak. 2001 is where Jay-Z was the end of Jay-Z's peak as a top rapper. After that, he morphs into being a mogul. He takes over Def Jam. He takes over Def Jam. That's when he starts buying art, shit like that, and then he eventually, of course, turns into a billionaire. But this was the last album. This was the last album, the last great peak album where we saw peak Jay-Z. To me, I don't think he was at his peak when he made Black Album. I think after this album, there's a dip, and rightfully so. Like we're talking 96 to 2001, a 5 year stretch where he's producing number one album after number one album, doing the tours, doing what he's doing. But I thought the Blueprint he was at, this was his apex per se. Phenomenal album. Um, Again, this is when Kanye as a producer we knew what Kanye was, but between this album and the Black album, I could make a case that Kanye was the MVP of both these albums, of both this album and the Black album. That's how phenomenal the production was on this particular album. So, best of the 21st century, The Blueprint came out, of course, in 2001. Just one real thought before I let you go. Just a horrific weekend in general with what was going on in the world. You can go to the news to find if you want to what transpired in Brown University, what transpired over in Austria. I'll talk about the tragic murders and deaths of Rob and Carol Reiner. Rob Reiner, of course, legendary director, made some of the best films of the 21st century. When Harry Met Sally, Princess Bride, Few Good Men, Misery. Just to name a few. Of course, he was Meathead in the legendary sitcom All in the Family. Murdered by his own son, Nick Reiner, who has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Is one of those stories that I think sometimes people get it mistaken when you think that somebody or know something about how somebody's living, but the reality situation is they have the same problems that people who are not celebrities or don't have a lot of money have as well. Certain things are not, life doesn't discriminate on. Drug abuse, mental health. Uh, Certain people are dealing with the same shit that the average Joe, as far as average Joe is dealing with. And I think that this is a perfect case of that. That you can assume that the Reiner family is well to do with the money and all the fame and the prestige and all that. But the truth of the matter is they were dealing with when your son has a lifelong, basically drug addiction, and there's no telling how many countless. I'm sure they did everything they could possibly do. He had the best of resources as far as I'm sure with hospitals and mental hospitals or drug treatment centers and all that. I'm sure they went through all that, but it didn't matter at the end of the day. And that, again, there's no amount of money that can buy when something like that goes left. Um, Everything that you've heard about Rob Reiner, with the exception of 47, has seemingly been positive. Has been positive. He was absolutely revered, and Carol too, and his wife Carol too. They're absolutely revered amongst the community in terms of the Hollywood community, people that work with him. James Woods, I saw an interview with James Woods, said that he, in essence, saved his life, saved his career. He got James Woods on a movie that people didn't want James Woods to be on at the age of 32. Um, and again, I didn't know Rob Reiner. I didn't know Carol Reiner. I just knew their movies, and I grew up on their movies, and their movies were a part of my childhood and into my early adulthood. Um, but don't ever assume that someone above your, in a different tax bracket does not deal with the same shit that you're dealing with. And sure, we all would like to have a lot of money. We all would like to be millionaires. It doesn't make the problem. It does not make life problems go away. It doesn't. I know that sounds simplistic, but that's just the reality of the situation. And again, this is this can happen anywhere. It can happen in Brentwood, California. It can happen in Timbuktu. It can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter the socioeconomic status. Obviously, this is a horrendous tragedy. You have two people that no longer are on this earth. The lives of the people around them will be forever affected. I don't know what happens to Nick Reiner. I don't foresee the death penalty. He'll go to jail, but he has to live with himself in terms of what he did. But just an awful situation with that. Uh, the legacy of Rob Reiner's films will last a lifetime, will last forever. He was that prolific of a filmmaker and that just, dominant of a filmmaker in terms of his impact. So certainly rest in peace to both Rob Reiner and Carol Reiner. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. I will see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your week. So long.